John F. Kennedy is one of the most popular presidents because of the way his presidency ended. But today, I'm going to share how his great presidency started with his inaugural address in 1961. So, his inauguration speech struck deep into the hearts of the nation almost 65 years ago. This speech has endured because of how it was delivered, who spoke it, and the context in which it was spoken. Okay, as I said before, this speech was given given in 1961, but the time and place and and how the speech was spoken is vital to the context and why it matters and how Kennedy spoke it, because he's speaking to a certain audience, an audience that was living through the Cold War, as spoken before. And just a little context: the Cold War wasn't an actual war. We didn't actually send troops into Russia. It was more of a kind of political standoff of who can build the most nukes, who can have the most troops ready to go. So that context kind of gives Kennedy motivation to talk about that, because he's elected into a Cold War. So he gave his speech on the East Portico of the U.S. Capitol in Washington, D.C. That's a pretty traditional place for a president to give a speech after he's inaugurated. And a little bit of context, it's obviously January 20th in Washington, D.C., and it was freaking cold. It was 20 degrees, and then there was a wind that was making it 7 degrees, and Kennedy was the only person on, you can see it in the screen, he's the only person not wearing a full wool jacket. He's just in a normal suit coat, and I wore a suit coat to prom, and it was 60 degrees, 70 degrees, and I was perfectly fine in that. So he was probably freezing. But I'm gonna talk a little bit more about that in ethos and how legitimate of a man he was, and how legitimate of a speaker he was. A little bit of background on JFK. So his grandpa was both his grandpas were representatives. One of them was state representative, and one of them was a United States representative. So that gives him a little bit of a nice boost to go into the political realm. But he wasn't necessarily going to go there right away. He didn't really know his direction in life. So he went into World War II, and I'll talk a little bit more about his story as well in ethos. Is that he was a very legitimate soldier. He wasn't someone who just sat on the sidelines. He was a very legitimate soldier. And after the war, he was very fortunate to survive, but his brother Joe was not. His brother Joe died in a plane crash, I believe. And after the war, John was like, what do I do? Do I become a writer? Do I become a teacher? And his father convinced him through his brother dying that he should become a politician. He should fight for what is right. He should encourage people to not go to war. He should use his experience of war to steer the country away from that, to steer the country away from going into unnecessary battles. Obviously, World War II was probably necessary, but to avoid unnecessary deaths, because his own brother died, and that gave him a little bit of real, raw experience of what that can do to a family. So his father was very rich as well. That gave him a nice little step up into the political world. He needed a lot of money, and that gave him a nice little platform. And I kind of wanted to show how he was as a president, so I have some quotes here. Sure, it's a big job, but I don't know anybody who can do it better than I can. Plus, the pay is good, and I can walk to work. He's a very confident man. He's a very good man. He's very fit for the job. So I thought I'd show that, and that's a little bit of background on JFK. Okay, the significance then and now. So, Kennedy's speech was important because of the unity, good global leadership, and civic responsibility it promoted. This speech was a stepping stone towards a new America, America that had just escaped World War II, but was ready to move on and ready to become a new country. So, I wanted to compare it to how we speak now as a political country. So the first words in JFK's speech were, "We observe today not a victory of party, but a celebration of freedom." So he's speaking on how because he barely won his election, he's speaking on how he's more about uniting the country rather than saying the right is correct or the left is correct. And Donald Trump started his speech with something of, he insinuated that the presidency before wasn't doing a good job, that America was weak. And I think it shows a very good comparison, is that we need more people like JFK in the political world today. We need someone who wants to unite the country, not divide the country. And here we go. This is him speaking
Finally,
in metaphor.
to those nations who would make themselves our adversary, we offer not a pledge, but a request that both sides begin anew the quest for peace. Before the dark powers of destruction, unleashed by science, engulf all humanity in planned or accidental self-destruction.
So, maybe this work. There we go. He uses rhetorical devices in this. He uses a very, very powerful metaphor. He says, the dark powers of destruction unleashed by science. So, he's talking about nuclear weapons, obviously. But he never says nukes. He never says nuclear weapons. He actually doesn't say that in his entire speech. Yet everybody in the audience knows what he's talking about, because he uses such a genius metaphor, in my opinion, because the effects of nuclear weapons are dark. The powers that are unleashed by science are dark, and they can cause great pain. And I feel like he really draws the audience in with how he speaks. He speaks in almost a roundabout way, but yet it gets the point across exactly how he wants to. The next one he uses is an anastrophe. So rather than saying things straightforward, he says, ask not or dare not. So another famous quote is, ask not what your country can do for you, rather what you can do for your country. It's saying to people, hey, get off your butt, produce, be a contributing member to our society, rather than saying, what can the government give me for free? He's emphasizing that by saying, ask and not. It really draws your attention in. Why is he saying it backwards? Parallelism. He uses this, united there's little we cannot do, divided there's little we can do. So these two phrases are very similar to each other, but he flips it, so divided there's little we can, united there's little we cannot do. He uses ethos because he's a World War II hero, and he has a very legitimate background. Pathos, he appeals to the audience through the unity and compassion he speaks about. He's a very logical speaker. Everything he says makes sense. It will endure because of how well worded it is and how objectively true the speech is. Thank you for listening to my speech.